You're listening to the Forest School podcast with Lewis Ames and Gemma Southerden.
And a massive thanks to our current patrons Simon Kenny, Joe H, Brona Steed, Jude Vincent and Chrissy McEvoy. Thank you so much, guys. It really does mean a lot. Yeah, start with Chris. Highly professional.
Throwing them away now.
Even more professional. It's not a euphemism. She has actually just thrown crisps. They're about 1.5 meters away on the floor.
That's far enough away that I can't absent-mindedly eat more of them, though.
Oh, I see.
Yeah?
Is that what it's about?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. We saw each other at the Oak. I keep calling it an Oak something, and that's not the right one. What is it?
Fair.
The Oak Fair.
At King's Stag in Dorset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a funnier name than that, though. It's in, like, Gaylord...
Stockton Gaylord.
Stockton Gaylord. There you go. Because people like funny English names.
They do.
Stockton Gaylord.
Sure.
Not far from Shitterton.
Gaylord. I think it's Gaylord.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyway.
That's even better.
Anyway. Yeah. Did you like the Oak Fair? What did you like about the Oak Fair?
What did I like about the Oak Fair? I liked that it was... So...
Do you want to stop while that really noisy air vehicle goes over? What did you like about the Oak Fair?
What did I like about the Oak Fair? I liked that, you can tell a lot about a festival, but it wasn't an event, by doing a bit of people watching. And, that can make you feel very comfortable or make you feel, out of place. And what I did think was that there were lots of people, or lots of groups, where there was 2 generations of slightly alternative people. So it was alternative adults with their alternative parents, or alternative kids with their alternative parents with their alternative young children. And I mean that in the sense of people who are a bit outdoorsy, people who could identify some trees, could know a bit about wood carving. So it was it wasn't people with blue mohawks and stuff. But it was.
Although there were some people like that.
Yes.
There was some cool hair. There were lots of dogs. And I saw a minor celebrity. I don't know what his real name is.
I know, we met each other.
Oh my God.
I met your mum.
You met my mum.
I met your mum, mate.
You met my mum, and I don't know what his real name is, but his Instagram thing is Green Indie. He is he's on Springwatch sometimes doing little films about goshawks. And he was there watching the falconry display. I was like, I knew that guy.
The falconry display that couldn't get their bird out of the tree.
No, they got their bird out of the tree. Maybe we saw different times.
I didn't want to see it, but we walked past while the guy was clearly doing that thing of we realised this as we were driving home. I was debriefing with my wife and going, you can't move on, can you? You can't go, I'll leave that bird up in the tree. It's not coming back. We'll get on with one of the other ones. He's got to focus on that. But there's maybe a couple of hundred people watching him, and he was there going, come on now, come on, stop, if you can come back now, it would be great. In this, I don't know what bird of prey it was, but it didn't want to come back at all. And it was just quite entertaining seeing him.
Awkward.
Yeah. What did I
like? I liked the living history people. So there was an ancient Wessex group and then a medieval group, just with little stalls doing things, and they weren't all selling stuff either. Some the medieval people were just this. Yeah. I spoke to a nice guy who was a scrivener, and I was like, aha, my maiden name is Scriven. I was Gemma Scriven. So I was,
What's a scrivener?
So scrivener is in times when people couldn't read and write, or not everyone could read and write, they would go travel around and you would pay them to read and write stuff for you. So if you had a document they wanted read to you, you could do that, and you would dictate and they would write. And he had made had some really weird kind of artifacts on his stall, including a cup that was made out of an old horn of a cow. Oh. And he said you heat it in boiling water and then you can bend it into different shapes, and that's cool. And I was talking to those kind of people, going, "Oh, what you doing?" And a person going, "Well, I'm making Viking style jewellery out of silver wire, and it's a bit like French knitting, and this is how you do it." All those kind of things. It's oh, nice.
Yeah, it's very impressive. Sort of, I don't want to say awe-inspiring. That's quite a big word, but like it is impressive seeing like, oh right, this is what people did, and and for lots of it as well. That sort of that. So there was part of it was more Bronze Agey stuff, and the medieval one. But it's like actually, and we've talked about this in the countryside. Other than clothing changing, a lot of those jobs went on until late into the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
You know, somebody maybe not scrivening, but
or maybe so.
or maybe so. But you know, that idea of like, okay, this is like wool spinning by hand, and that goes for from the 1100s or you know the 800s up to the 1800s. People are still doing it in some places, and it is amazing to think that stuff just lasted and lasted and lasted. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so you sent.
No, you sent.
No, I sent. No, you.
No, you did.
No, I did. But I. Was it It wasn't Sage.
Yeah.
It's Sage.
It's
Do you
a
have
Sage.
the title
I
of
will
the article?
find it right now.
So are we...
It's free. It's not behind a paywall, so that's good. So it's a Sage journal. It's the Journal of Early Childhood Research, which, may I just say at this point, I'm very interested in research, like proper, valid, authentic, relevant research into forest school, right? So much of it is early childhood, and then I'm like, I'm less interested now. I want it cross childhood. Why does it? Why? Yeah, it's probably because most forest school is happening in early childhood still at the moment. But I am intrigued and interested to read more research that is with, and you know, and it's because it's often done in schools or nursery settings and stuff. Yeah. It's not cross age.
Yeah.
It's like, even if it is with older children, if it's like upper primary school or whatever, like this is a study of year 6 pupils and how they responded to forest school at this time in their lives. They're all the same age, and that's boring. Anyway, the title of it is, "Oh no, the stick keeps falling. An analytical framework for conceptualizing young children's interactions during free play in a woodland setting" by Cheryl Ellis, Gary Beauchamp, Sean Sawar, and some more authors, which there's like loads more. So it's a group of authors, and it was published in January of this year,
2021.
Yeah, so you can read it, and it's
not very long.
It's not very long, and then it does link to lots of other articles, which I then went down a bit of a rabbit hole and sent you the link to another one, which they reference, all about affordances, which I've just read the beginning of, and then you've read the whole thing.
Read the whole of that one.
But we've both read the whole of this Sage one.
So this Sage one, just if you had to sum it up in like the shortest way, is probably they gave kids the option of wearing glasses with cameras in, and then they looked at the footage to see what's going on, and they sorted it by interactions. And they sorted it by interactions with this and interactions with that and interactions of this type. I thought it was quite interesting. They mentioned it, I think, quite late in the article, this idea that they got the video footage, and obviously there was absolutely loads of it. I can't remember how many weeks they did it over.
7 weeks. And
they had lots of cameras that the kids could wear or could take off whenever they were done.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. But they said they got, I think it says 3 or 4 researchers to transcribe what was happening individually.
Yep.
Because when I was reading the rest of the article, I was like, oh yeah, if you and I sat together and watched some footage, we would like bounce off each other, and we would like influence each other. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like we would...
so subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, but we would sort of congregate on an idea, and then you'd get into a framework, and then you'd go... And there's something quite rare, I think, about having a piece of... some examples of play looked at independently by different people. It occurred to me that that's something that not often happens. Normally it's like, I am the one leader and I watch that play, or it's me and my assistant and we talk to each other beforehand.
Yeah.
And having it as a completely clean slate of like, you're just watching the video.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean about like valid and authentic research, because I still feel like, I'm sure there's loads being done, but so much of the stuff that like, sort of promotes forest school is just like anecdotal and very personal, and just people going, oh, but it's just great for kids to be out in nature. It's really, child-led learning is the way. But actually, they're like, how do you do this kind of social research? It's really like, to choose that methodology, like the whole camera thing in the glasses is, really interesting. And I've seen some other examples of stuff being done about like gaze and eye line, sight lines similar to this, and maybe even like heart rate and things like that. So getting kids to wear like monitors, and so you're getting into the real realms of the scientific rather than just the emotive and the anecdotal realm.
It's very Western, isn't it? To be like Western science of like, we can isolate this and we can isolate this and we can pick this down, and like it's not a holistic view of it. It is a very...
But don't you think that there is a place for that kind of evidence to back up the kind of holistic side of things, rather than just, I don't know. I kind of feel like...
I wasn't saying it was a bad thing. I was just saying it is an example of stripping away bits and stripping away bits.
Yeah, and that stripping away, it happens here because not only did they get the researchers to individually transcribe the video, they did it first with the sound completely muted. So they were transcribing the movements and gestures of the children first without any sound allocated, and then again with the talking on it, which is very interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's one thing to say, isn't it? So have you got the list of the different types of interactions there?
I have it right here.
Could you read that? Because then that gives you quite a framework of like what they're looking at.
Yeah, so the analysis identified 6 key themes, and they've said that they're not hierarchical or discrete, but the interactions that they've sort of put into categories are the interactions with environment, with self, with affordances, with peers, with adults, and with time. And then they kind of discuss those elements through the article. Just can we pick up on like affordances first of all, because people might not be familiar with that term, and the other article that I read at the beginning of and you read the whole of was sort of really
more
focused
about affordances,
on affordances, wasn't it? So those people who kind of know about play work and stuff will have probably heard that term in terms of it being what an object or a thing can offer in terms of how it can be used. So very relevant to play in terms of like, oh, this stick can be a thing for hitting things with, or it can be a thing for waving in the air and making a sound, or it can be, those kind of things, or this low-hanging branch, the affordance of it are I can swing from it, or I can climb on it, or I can hug it, or...
Find out about CPD courses at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
But there was an interesting bit in this Sage article about affordances and about affordances changing with a singular object. Did you pick up on that bit?
In the Sage one or in the other one?
In the Sage one, there was a bit that was like a single environment or object will present different affordances as the child ages, or it was like, ages or becomes more familiar or whatever else, which is something I had not necessarily conceptualized before. I probably had thought about it, but not in such a specific way. So that idea that like, and I think this is true, lots of adults will like look at a play space, and this is probably how you design a like early years classroom. You'd go, there's a writing area, there's the climbing wall, this is all loose parts, so that can be, I don't know, tower building or whatever. But saying that like if the children can't see that resource as tower building, then it's not there.
The affordance isn't available.
It doesn't exist. So you or like like climbing is a really good example of like, if you asked someone on their first day in our woods what climbing affordances are there, you're going to get a very different answer from once they've been there for a year. Then you say, what climbing affordances are there? And they'll go, you can literally climb everything, including Lewis and Gemma sometimes. You can just climb and climb, and I don't... It's just very interesting to get into that mindset of like, just because you can see that it has the potential to do or be something, doesn't mean that that is an option present in another person's mind, or even, doesn't exist for them. Which is massive.
It is massive. And they definitely, the interactions with time thing.
So that mentions familiarity.
Yeah, I found really interesting that they kind of teased that out as a specific interaction. It kind of blew my mind a little bit. And they kind of had the ones that were like obvious and things that we've noticed, but it's always nice to have it kind of backed up by like research where they've gone through hours of footage and actually, in a more rigorous way defined it. Which was over the 7 weeks, the children moved further and further away from the central log circle and explored more of the
Which again,
space.
everybody would know, and everybody would instinctively go, "Oh yeah, that's what happens over time." But how many of us have actually made a note and gone, "Oh, the furthest child went 2.5 meters away and did this and did this," and
and then they noticed that also, that, as you said, they kind of had longer to explore the affordances, so that. As you say, like the stick wasn't just the thing for hitting something with. It then became the bouncing on the branch, and then you could also do this, and then you could also do this, and it was like one affordance kind of leads to another. And the familiarity and the level of nature connection that they talk about. So they were talking about sticks being used like progressively more as the sessions went on. So I guess you are seeing more and more affordance within a similar type of object over time.
Yeah, that was one where the categories that they had picked, established, seen.
Yep.
Can't remember what the word is. It seemed to me slightly random at that point because they talked about them being used as tools, and then there's a bit underneath that kind of explains, well, how were they used as tools? And it was like, oh, they were used for digging, for fighting, for whatever else. And it was like, digging is actually part of interacting with the environment, and using them as sticks is actually part of peer interaction. And it was like, well, why is it this? It's like a Venn diagram that doesn't, it's almost like not all of the circles felt needed. Right. It was like, so maybe that thing about tools and role playing, actually, once you get past that level, they all fit in another category anyway. So it didn't feel like you needed that category. Maybe.
I like the distinction of the sort of interactions with objects and the distinction they made between using an object as is or as if. And I thought that was a nice way of putting it. So going back to examples of sticks, like sometimes you're playing with a stick and it's a stick, but sometimes you're playing with a stick and it is a magic wand or a hosepipe or a dog or whatever. And I mean, it struck me that a lot of the stuff talked about in this article is just Bob Hughes' play types, isn't it? But I wonder, I can't remember whether they actually said that the kind of as if moments of playing with natural materials increased as the time went on. Do you remember whether they said that?
No, I don't remember reading that bit.
But it's interesting to kind of distinguish between those two things, and it made me think that I would like to think about that when I'm observing play and try and for like different children, how much of their play is spent with objects as is and how many sort of moments are as if.
Well, we've talked about that in the past, haven't we? And we've had either some people that are able to voice that, or like we've had leaders before who've gone, well, I've had children in my group who will go, this is, we play that game, this is not, where you go, oh, this isn't a stick, this is a sword, or this, and some people who will go, yeah, but I work with people, or for me, they're like, well, it's a leaf.
Yeah.
It's a leaf. And we're like, no, it's a fancy thing. And they're like, right, but it's a leaf though, isn't it? And we've
and it can make people feel highly anxious to start telling them that it's something else. And they can, even if they get it, they get the whole like imaginative concept of it, but it's going to make them feel really on edge.
Well, which would make me then feel like you were moving towards like an uncomfortable level of like progression checking. If you were like, oh, this person's been I'm not saying you're suggesting this.
No,
but if somebody took this the wrong way, you could end up in a place where they went, well, they're doing lots of as-is play, but I'm not seeing them do any as-if play. So we're gonna I'm gonna duct tape the wizard's hat onto them this week, so that they really.
Well, that's exactly what I meant, Lewis. It's exactly what I want to do.
And we should be assessing them and giving them points for how much.
And I'm going to do enforced imaginative interpretive dance at the beginning of every session, where they do interact with the natural environment as dance partners as well. Definitely. Okay, so there's another thing. I learned something reading this article. Pole bridging. You heard of pole bridging?
No.
Neither had I. So part of interactions with self, they talk about the children kind of being by themselves and talking to themselves and like making noises like an imaginary aeroplane and things like that, and doing pole bridging. So I had to Google that. And pole bridging is what you do when you kind of give a running commentary of what you're doing while you're doing it. So you might go, oh, I think I'm gonna whittle this stick. Yeah, I'm gonna find a good place to sit down. Oh, I think I might take all this bark off. Oh, I'm going to turn it round now so I don't cut my fingers. It's that kind of like running commentary.
Okay.
And so apparently it is a language development stage that you'll notice that children start pole bridging. But in the article, the thing I read, it said that children who have sort of challenges with language might start pole bridging, but you'll notice that the language is kind of not quite fully formed while they're pole bridging, or it's a little bit kind of muddled, and that might be an indication that there's some stuff, a bit of a delay going on that you can kind of help with by modelling pole bridging, but make sure you're not annoying, because you can imagine. But it's interesting. It's one of those things I think you do instinctively with some groups, don't you think? That you're kind of you definitely do it. I see you doing it. In terms of, so it's instead of, yeah, all the time.
Okay.
All the time. So it can be a play invitation. So you might go, oh, I think I'm going to do this thing now.
Okay, right.
So it's not like, who wants to play it?
It's that declarative thing.
Declarative language, completely. And it's a way of like, and so if you make, and especially if you or I do something where you're, oh, that was a bit silly. I did this. We don't say that was a bit silly.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? You're like, oh, I'm glad that nearly hit my leg. I'm going to move my
scared. I'm
going to move my body now because what I just did was blah blah blah.
Or that questioning thing we've talked about before, where you don't give an answer. You go, if it was a buzzard, I'd be looking for it to have no neck, and I'd be looking for.
Yeah, so you're describing your internal thought processes out loud. Yeah. So the language stage.
I've always assumed that was something to do with. Do you know this thing about left brain, right brain, and that your right brain like can't do language, but it can hear language. Which is why sometimes walking around going like keys helps you find your keys, because the right side of your brain goes, oh, fuck, is it keys we're looking for, mate? I know where they are. Right. Or they've done these weird tests where they split people's brains in half, and they only show the right eye something, like on a screen, and it says like, pick up the ball. And so they pick up the ball, and then they ask the person, why did you pick up the ball? But because the left brain does speech, it goes, I really like this red ball. But it doesn't know that the
makes up a story.
That was
a storytelling thing, wasn't it? That we read.
Which is really interesting. Yeah. And I'd assumed that what we're now saying is pole bridging was to do with that.
It probably is, isn't it? That is language development. You know.
And I've seen as well on the excellent, highly scientific. Oh, we're talking about scientifically robust things. Secret Life of 5-year-olds, which is the most scientifically. It's awful, but it is entertaining. Where they were talking about children regulating through singing. Yeah. And they had a girl who something was going wrong, and she was just up in the treehouse on her own going like, I'm feeling sad, my friends have gone away, I miss my mommy, where is my... But quite happily singing, but kind of regulating through this like... It's like a weird Disney overload of like, well, this emotion is too big to process. Better do jazz hands. Yeah, that's
amazing. And my god, you could do a whole research project on interactions with self in the forest, couldn't you? In that kind of way, like what do people do?
Well, so this then leads on
time in the woods.
Leads on to this second article, which I cannot find. It's not in my head the name of it. But it was looking at affordances. And interestingly, because you said you didn't see it very often, it was looking at affordances in the same place for 4 to 6 year olds, 6 to 7 year olds and 7 to 8 year olds.
Sorry, is this other article?
This is the other article. This is this.
Shall I quickly find the title of that?
Please do.
Just to be super profesh.
But what I was going to say was that they added an affordance type. Okay. And they talked about... public versus private.
Yes, I started reading that bit.
So, which is similar to I almost started talking to you about it earlier because we were talking about.
What were we talking about earlier? That I said, stop talking, Lewis. Say this on the podcast.
No, you said if you could save what you're saying, and I finished it in my head for someone who cares. No, but that's not what made me think of it. What made me think of it was when you arrived, you saw the fairy tree house, the fairy castle that I have carved into a tree stump.
Yeah.
And you said, it's great, and I think people will play with it. I think they would play with it more. Obviously, it's a tree stump. We can't move it. It's literally in the ground. We said, I'd be interested to see who plays with it because it's quite an exposed place. There's quite a lot of people watching. Which is so, then this research article is saying one of the affordances is privacy, public versus privacy, and going, how much affordance was there for private space and what happened in the private space and did that change? Which made me think about when you were saying about that treehouse, the fairy castle going, play is different when it's in private.
Yeah.
And I imagine pole bridging is different when it's in private.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Like you could do a whole study, get people to like wear little microphones and just pick up on their verbal their utterances.
So do you think the adult version is pop-propriation when you're at home on your own? Or not at home,
yeah.
when you're going like, cooking up the dinner.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to eat some later. Put in the spoon in there. Fuck, I've dropped the spoon in there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's
completely.
Adult pole bridging.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. And when you're like quite stressed out and you're thinking of loads of different things and you're like, no, right, focus on what you're doing. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually doing this. Don't do that now. Think that. I say that all the time out loud. Yeah. What are you doing that for now? Don't do that now. Focus on the thing you're doing.
My wife calls it the dad tick, where for apparently no reason to her, but I've been obviously ticking away. And I just go, right.
Oh, I say right all the time.
You slap your legs and you go, right. And that's the dad tick of like, do dad things now.
I even refer to the right by I go right, and then I don't do anything, and I go, I've said right now, so that means something's magically going to happen. Yeah, and then.
Okay, so what is it pole bridging? If no, I'm going to go on another tangent.
Right.
Is it pole bridging if I'm doing pain management by singing about how I've stubbed my toe? Because I do that a lot. That's a real common one for like, pain management. Something's happened. Or I'm in a group where there's kids about and I can't go fucking bowling shit, and so you just go like, I've really hurt my thumb.
I was about to say, do you turn it into a song? And yes, you do, because that is absolutely. So why do we do that? That's interesting, isn't it? So is that about?
It's big feeling, isn't it? The same as
is that about releasing endorphins through singing? Because that happens, doesn't it? When you sing, you release endorphins.
And maybe regulating breathing.
Oh yeah, longer out breath calms the vagus system.
Yeah.
Okay, fucking hell, we've really... Well, let me just see. This is all good stuff, man. Right. Getting back to that other article that you're talking about, affordances and public and private space, is called Children and the Outdoor Environment. Well, I mean...
That was worth it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Aren't you glad? Aren't you all glad?
But again, it's an article in European Early Childhood Research Journal, December 2010, and the author is Leila Nicholson from Mälardalen University. I've probably pronounced that wrong. And Annette Sandberg from the same university. I'm guessing that's like in Sweden or Denmark or somewhere. I don't know. I should have looked it up beforehand. But anyway.
But that's what
Sweden.
That study was about, was including privacy.
Oh, I'm going to read it.
In the affordance.
So juicy. So delicious.
Yeah.
I love this shit.
Yeah. It is a good one. And again, short. If you're listening to this and doing your level 3, you've got to write about some actual forest school research, do this one because it's real good and it will help you look at your play site.
And this podcast is just such a great example of like critically analysing these articles as well.
I want to see someone quote like, "I've really fucked my thumb." Quoted Lewis Ames.
No, you were like critically analysing that last one and going, oh yeah, but I'm not quite sure where they've done the Venn diagrams don't quite match up all that stuff. There you go. There's some critical analysis.
I am slightly worthwhile.
I wanted to say something else. What did you pick up on the thing about liminal places? Ooh la la.
Tell me about liminal
places. I love it.
Tell me about liminal places.
So as far as I understand, I've heard this term liminal in terms of
as in subliminal. Same root word. No.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, because okay, right. I need to Google this. But liminal. Okay, stick first of all with the liminal place thing.
Yeah.
I do believe that it means about like the edge of a place, and so in the olden days when people believed in like this much more in the spiritual world, things like Halloween. Mm-hmm. it's a liminal time because they're like
dusk would be a liminal time.
Yeah, I think so. And the veil between the worlds is thin at those times, so spirits can go between them, Right. And in this context, they're talking about liminal places existing in real life, but also in the imaginary world.
Mm-hmm.
So that play that's happening, do you know what I mean? So here are the woods.
Mm-hmm.
You've got free play. You're in a place where there are 3 trees growing quite close together. That exists in real world. There is the forest floor. There are those 3 trees in a triangle together. But 4 children go into that space, and through their cooperative and spontaneous free play, that triangle of 3 trees becomes a small house full of cats.
Yeah.
That's one of the examples in the thing. Not the 3 trees thing, but the cat family. Mm-hmm. So, and can you remember playing in that way where those 2 worlds are held in your mind with equal weight? Do you remember that kind of play? Do you remember being there? And it's not necessarily that you can visualize it, but the world of the house with the cat family is as real to you when you're playing as, but neither of those worlds disappears. You're aware of both those things at the same time. I'm flipping fascinated by that kind of schmizzle. Absolutely. So I had a question for you. If you understand that concept, which you're looking at me like
I do. No, I do. No, sorry, I was off on my own world of thinking I don't have many play memories, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go on.
That's a shame. Maybe they're just buried under some other shit.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we should do a podcast where you are hypnotised back to your childhood.
Sure.
Let's do it. My questions for you are... I have 2, I'm going to say them at the same time. Where in our woods are the liminal places? And are we, as practitioners, on a quest to make more liminal places in the woods?
Okay. So, immediate gut response is that there are liminal places, but the border shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So, depending on the group, depending on the play, depending on the things. So, definitely our big tree house is a liminal space. But when I got to, I was like, there, straight away. And then I was like, and it's underneath. Yep. And it's on the steps around it. Yes, sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And it's slightly further up the hill.
Yes.
Yes, it is actually sometimes, because sometimes the house is connected. And there's a flat area there, isn't there? And sometimes that's connected to the treehouse. So actually the border is along a different path. Okay, so sometimes is it, and then does it sometimes grow up the hill? Yes, sometimes it has grown up the hill, and so that's an example where I was like, yes, it always radiates from that treehouse. But radiating is the word, or maybe pulsing, where it sort of, or maybe like the tide of the play sort of comes out. And then you can almost see the play cycle's end as it tendrils back in towards the treehouse, where it's fewer and fewer people, and they're going, well, this is actually our den, and this is actually.
And now I'm just focused on tying a knot to this tree in the treehouse, as opposed to.
And then the tide might come back out again, where you go oh, okay, so actually now this is our land, and we're building borders here and here, and we're going to set a trap, and it. So.
Yes, and then. The other smaller tree house is its own liminal place, but then the 2 are connected by a corridor.
Yes.
As well, so it can extend that far. So all of that is kind of play territory.
But I think so. That corridor is what, 100 meters, 150 meters.
Yeah.
You think more? You think less?
Maybe a bit more, but yeah.
Okay. But I would say quite often I see the play. The belief in the play, that suspension of disbelief, pause, or the volume maybe gets turned down as they move along the path, and then it gets turned back up when they arrive at the other place. Quite often, because there's nothing on that path; it's just a path, right? There's nothing interesting along the way. I mean,
there is.
There's nothing that can distract you from the play along that path. So quite often, what I see is we're going to go to the other tree house. Okay. We're all pirates, yaha! And then there's no mention of being pirates until they get to the other treehouse, when it turns back up and they go, we're here! It's almost like the journey bit requires more of their attention to not trip, to navigate a narrow path, to do whatever else.
Or in my case, oh look, there's a feather.
Oh, look, there's a feather.
I'm out of roll.
So I don't necessarily... I don't think I've ever seen that path stay as a liminal space completely. I think there is always at least a volume lowering along the path. Almost like a...
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So the second bit, is it our job to make more liminal spaces? Well, I don't think you can make one. I think you can make an affordance for one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think part of what someone needs to make a space into a liminal space is different for each group, person, time of day. Someone might go for, right now for my play needs, to make this into a space, I need tarps all the way round this house, and that's when it will be a house. Another day, they might actually just go, no, these 4 buckets on the ground, that's our house. And neither of them is less house than the other house.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
I do know what you mean.
In terms of should we be making more? I think what you'd end up making is more of that more constructed end, tarps, shelters, den houses, whatever else. But it doesn't necessarily reflect that tomorrow then play might need a bigger space, or a different day that, it doesn't, it's not as flexible, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess what I was reflecting on as well was that there are definitely, you could map out the liminal places on a map, I think. I agree with you. Treehouse, digging hole, mud kitchen, den hill, here around the fire circle, this space over here where we often have hammocks and nets and stuff. And so I'm not saying the same kind of play always happens there, but there's something about those places that, whether it's because of the affordances that are there, become these liminal places where they can exist in both worlds at the same time, concurrently, the play imaginative world and the real world. But I'm interested to know
why
that is. So some of it is obvious,
if you had to list a criteria,
why has that happened? Because the play does. There are some places in the woods where play just doesn't happen. Other stuff happens where it's just firmly in the real world. So bottom right hand corner, that we go there not very often, but we as a group, and not just you and me, I mean.
Yeah.
But the stuff that happens there is real world. It's we are digging the pond, or you might hide, but it's literally just you are hiding there because there is useful stuff to hide with. You're not hiding there going, I'm a squirrel and I've taken my food here. You're just hiding as part of the game. Or you're getting, a particular type of leaf, the cherry trees are down there. So it's we're going to that place to look at the cherry. I've never seen any kind of
role play down
there. Or any kind of other play that involves it being an imaginary space or imaginary world. And then I was thinking, maybe it's because we've built stuff. So maybe that is shouting out, this is a place to play, like the mud kitchen. Or the digging hole. You could argue that the creation of a hole made by people is a kind of flag to go, there's affordance here. Yeah. This is what can be. This is not just a hole. This is a dwarf mine. This is a World War II bunker or whatever. But then there are some places like the Den Hill where sometimes there's stuff constructed there, kind of cross beams for making dens on, but not all the time. And people do gravitate there and play there, and it does become a liminal space without us having built anything. But is that because we have given it a name? Is that because we go, let's go to the Den Hill? So now it becomes defined as a place, and once it's defined as a place, it can then transcend, shift into
often wondered
imaginary world.
On that idea of name.
Support the podcast today by becoming a Patreon member at childrenoftheforest.com. Check out the podcast links for more details.
Yeah, I have often wondered on that idea of names. I've really liked in the past that our tree houses in particular have been called the Badger Club, the Squirrel Nest, the whatever. Especially Badger Club, because Badger Club, there was never a Badger Club. No. This wasn't a group that existed. No. We just asked them one day, what should we call that? And one of the kids said, call it Badger Club.
Yeah.
But that is a blank slate, whereas Den Hill is for dens. And I wonder if it's like...
But it's not always just for dens.
No, it's not always just for dens, but I wonder if that is halfway to it being liminal. So I wonder if like full liminal is like abstract name. It's, the whatever.
Well, like the kindergarten. Like there's no kindergarten in the kindergarten area now.
Yeah.
But that is a liminal place where a wide variety of different things happen.
Because it's not a kindergarten. But the Den Hill is like halfway there in that it's got a name, but the name is a slightly bit, tiny bit restrictive. Similarly, so I've been to quite a few schools where, I'm sure you have as well, where willow sculptures or willow constructions are very popular. And because of the limitations or benefits of willow, they often end up as spiders, igloos, or like a trail, like an archway
like a tunnel.
That's like a tunnel. And they are like play spaces, but so the school where I worked, where it had a spider, was always a spider. The children couldn't, no matter how many, if you proffered it, maybe let's go in the igloo, they'd be like, it's a spider. So it was almost like the liminal world in which that was a spider was so concrete that it couldn't be anything else. So can you have liminal spaces that are flexible? Sometimes this is a house, sometimes it's a
I think so.
surgery.
I think the digging hole is an example of that.
Right. So can you, on the other hand, can you have liminal spaces that are fixed, which is where you might get into something like the Wendy house, which is always the house, and there's always dolls in it, and there's always...
Well, that kitchen, for example, the mud kitchen is usually a kitchen, a cafe, a restaurant, the kitchen of a castle,
Yeah.
It's very rarely even as far as like an
Science.
apothecary or, like a potion mixing place or... I guess because of the real world connotations and the real world objects that are there. But having said that, the longer learners are near it, the more likely it is that those kind of human-made, very kitcheny artifacts become other things, like helmets or, they get taken away and used in other places as other things, don't they? As if things rather than as is, the longer that people are there.
Yeah. Or just it becomes a resource hub. When it's like, I need some charcoal. Where's the charcoal? Oh, right. There's probably some in there. Or, hey, we need some water to wash down this flag we've made.
Yeah.
Is it now a laundrette? No, I just know that there's water there.
Yeah. I guess what I meant with my second question as well about, like, is it are we on a quest to make more liminal places? Like, I kind of feel like sometimes we definitely are in terms of like developing certain areas or kind of trying to forecast a little bit like, this type of play could happen here. Like we can see the affordances that maybe our learners can't see yet. And we in some way highlight those either by constructing a trapeze or by sometimes not constructing anything, but going, we're going to play this game as a group. I'm going to proffer this game as a group, but we're going to start it over here instead of where we normally do. Or this is a great place for a tree house, so we're going to build it here. Do you know what I mean? Like, so we're on that. We often talk about the balance of kind of, my tummy's rumbling. Sorry if you can hear that. It's disgusting. The balance of like building stuff. You don't want to build too much stuff because the aim is the connection with the natural environment, but you do want to facilitate a wide range of play types, and you want to kind of highlight the affordances to those who might not be able to see it immediately. Do you know what I mean? And facilitate the inventiveness and the freedom. So are we always thinking about the woods and going, what could happen here? Like, what are the affordances here? And are we thinking about kind of zoning the woods in terms of, this type of play could happen here? And how can we broadcast that to the group? And is there a time, have we now reached a limit where we're like, that's it now, we've got all the liminal places that the woods right now affords? Or would you come back here in 5 years' time and find that actually there are more places that have been named now? The bottom right hand corner is called the such and such a thing, and often this type of play happens here.
I don't know that we've reached a I was going to say spiritual limit, conceptual limit. But I think there is something which possibly this second study that we're talking about is talking to in terms of it being privacy. There's something about a liminal space needing to have at least some component of privacy. Whether that's, you're up in a treehouse and that feels very private, whether that's your, I was thinking as well, right over there's that holly tree that some children cut away the inside of. So they've got this completely sheltered ball of ivy that they can climb up in. Ivy. It's holly. It's about a 30-foot holly tree, and they've cut away all the inside, so it's just a shell.
And the Zen Cafe is at the bottom.
But yeah, that idea of privacy, and I think you do at some point reach a physical limit whereby you can't have a liminal space next to another liminal space without one of them being out of action. Because if you're all, if you think about, I've been in schools where you're on like the nature area, or like this is the forest school area, and everything is so close that like if you're up climbing a tree, you can also see who's down there being a fairy and who's down there doing whittling and who's...
Do you reckon it needs privacy? Because I'm just thinking about some of the... Like the mud kitchen is not private, and loads of stuff happens there.
It's private because half of it is walled off, so you're private from one side. When it's here, and it's a very open space, but it's hammocks, the hammock is your privacy. So the privacy level might be, and this is where I was thinking about waves, the privacy level might be, we're going to build barriers 20 metres away from the treehouse, and this is our liminal space. The privacy might be, I'm going to wrap myself up in this hammock, and in this cocoon is where my space is. But I can't think of a space where I've seen... Like, you very rarely see that imaginative play on an open school field right in the middle. It happens at the edge, or it happens in the
around
corner,
a tree, or around a physical feature.
Around a physical feature. There has to be something that makes you feel privacy, or makes you feel... And I think this is a thing. So I'm reading primitive mythology, and it's talking about there's a big concept, but like religions essentially being play, and going like, we're all gonna believe this thing, and if you want to believe this thing with us, this is our play. Is a church a liminal space? Potentially.
Oh, definitely.
You put this thing up, and you go in this building.
We're in the kingdom of God now.
We all agree with this. I don't want to... It sounds belittling when you talk about religion as play, but like, what I mean is like, we all agree with this way of seeing the world right now, and in this building, there's no... you don't have to justify anything, or you don't have to...
it's a given.
It's a given. We're in this space. It's a given. We're in the holly tree, so we're all playing this game. We're in the hammocks, so we're all doing this thing. There is an element of privacy, I think, that has to come with a liminal space.
I am amazed when you see people playing though, and they're not in a physically private space, but you are in, like, so say a game is happening, but it's on the move, like a Harry Potter game or whatever.
Yeah.
Quick, let's go to herbology. We're late, and the group comes, through the fire circle, and other people are doing things in the fire circle, but we are invisible to the people on the way to herbology. And the world of the corridor of the herbology is very real for those people as they move to the next thing. And I find that amazing. And that probably is a sign, maybe. I don't know if I'm giving ourselves credit out of turn here, but it is a sign that they know that the play is going to be respected and isn't going to be interrupted, and no one's going to point and laugh, and that they feel at ease. Otherwise, it would be completely out of sight and more private.
Do you know what? I'd be interested to do a location map of play in playgrounds at breaks and lunchtimes in schools, and mark where the staff normally stand, because there's normally one or two places where the staff go, I stand here and I can see everything. And if I think back to it, where does the most imaginative play happen? As far a fucking way from them as they can get.
Well, that's in this article, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is in this article, and they say, so they mark...
In the Sage article?
Yes, so they mark and distinguish the interactions with other adults, with adults in this, and there's a really clear example of adulteration. So they say that most of the adults are really, like, sensitively respond to the free play that the children are doing through, for example, just answering a question that a child asks them, or providing a resource that a child asks for or whatever. But there's one adult, I felt kind of sorry for them, like reading the article, because they really get hammered. But it's like one adult approaches the children while they're playing and says, "Be careful. Oh, be careful there. Oh, it's tricky there. Be careful." And says, "So what have you found?" And the children are like, "Well, we found this, or we're playing this at the moment, or something." And the adult, it completely ignores what they say and says again, "What have you found? Come on, let's go this way and see what we can find." And the kids aren't even playing a game about like finding things at that time, and the adult is very fixated on resources. Yeah, that's kind of good example of adulteration, I think, to read if you're kind of new to the idea of play work and forest school and the impact on that. Because when you read it, you're like, oh, I completely get it. I completely feel how the children feel at that point.
I went to see a forest school session, and I was writing down things that were happening. And afterwards I was feeding back to the person. And it happened to not be them. It was one of their members of staff.
Yeah.
And I had written down, person X, as an adult, went and asked the children what kind of bugs were on the floor. They asked the children how they could find out the names of these bugs and where they thought the bugs would live. Full stop. Second sentence. The children had not been looking at, talking about, or interested in the bugs in any way before this adult approached. Yeah. I just left it at that. It's like, it's a clear, like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
What, Yeah. And it goes back to, Lily's thing on the hand of why am I talking now? It's very useful to remember in that, to stop yourself doing that adulterating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's your need. It's not their need. Yeah. It's your need to perceive that they have a need to learn.
But maybe it comes from a space of not necessarily understanding the range of affordances.
Oh, completely.
So if you have a mindset that like the affordance in the forest school space is bug hunting, and then you go the children or finding things, and then so in your mind you're looking at it and going, the children aren't getting the most out of this environment because they don't know what I know, that there's bug hunting available, and it's just, and then it becomes like I was doing the children a disservice by not highlighting the affordance to them. But I suppose if you're highlighting an affordance, you might go like, has anyone seen any bugs? Or you might go like, I'm going to go do this thing, rather than making. But it's just a very clunky way, isn't it, of showing someone what the affordances are, to go.
Yeah. And I think it probably verges on like unplayed out material within the adult as well. So the affordances that you as an adult might be fixated on are the things that you needed to do more of when you were a kid, and they're still in there in your system somewhere. And you're like, hey, do this thing with me. Like, appreciate this need I have.
And for lots of children and lots of learners, and actually lots of adults, the mere fact that someone else points out what you could do in that space makes something flip, and you go, I'm never doing that in that space.
Completely.
I'm absolutely. And they go like, oh, why? It's the same as like sometimes if you, so you might go, why don't we all collect items for a potion? And in your head you're going, they've been doing Harry Potter, and maybe we'll do. Come on, guys, let's all go and get the Harry Potter things. And because you've said it, it's a bit like going like, just know that you're not cool, all right? Yeah. And they go like, we're actually never ever going to do potions ever again. Because fuck you. And so you've got to balance
that. On the flip side, there are definitely times where at the right time and with the right group, you can completely unobtrusively do a bit of playing by yourself.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And for some people, they will come up and go, the heck are you doing?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm just doing this. Oh my God, can I do that? So it does work both ways, I think, depending on the time and the circumstance. And I reckon the longer you have a group who are kind of settled in place and connected to the environment, the more opportunities you might have to do that, because you're kind of needed less immediately to help with play, to help with any kind of like emotional stuff going down. That is how, we've talked about this so many times. But
so in this Sage article, they've got the different types of interaction, and then they break down the type of interaction into different things. So they've got like interacting with the environment, and then I'm doing this off the top of my head. They've got, digging, climbing, sorting, whatever the examples are. That's not the one I want to talk about. The one I want to talk about is interacting with adults. And then they had a list of verbs like console, comforting, instructing, can't remember what the other ones, describing, whatever else. And almost every single one of them, I think there's only like 7 in there, and 5 of them in brackets afterwards, it says adult to child.
Yeah.
Comforting, adult to child. Instructing, adult to child. Describing, adult to child.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting reading it and going, oh, so no children instructed the adult in any way. And no child
That's interesting,
comforted an adult. Now, comforting an adult is a big thing and is a weird thing. I wouldn't expect that. But I would expect to see some instruction. I would expect to see some, describing, some kind of,
I'm managing and controlling. You go over there. You do that.
Yeah.
Because I want to do the thing.
Yeah, essentially,
Get the resource. Get the wool.
To play the thing out.
Yeah.
And none of my peers are able to do it.
Yeah.
So you just have to be my puppet right now. You, the adult, have to be my puppet. So can you be a dog and I'll take you for a walk? Or, hey, chase me. Hey, do whatever. And so I was interested to see there that interactions with adults, they'd only listed adult to child, which either says there were no child to adult interactions in that group, or that they're categorizing them in some different way, or that that this forest school that they've gone to wasn't hugely it sounds like it is play based or play worker based.
It said they had 30 minutes of free play at the end of every session.
Right.
So that's the deal, that it's these are the activities, and then it's 30 minutes free play within that session.
Yeah.
And it's 7 weeks long. So those kind of interactions that we're talking about that we see all the time might be a time-based thing. It might be and especially if it's a new bunch of adults for these children.
Yeah. But none?
I mean, yeah, that is weird. They must have, yeah.
There's something missing there.
Because even the first, I went to observe a session the other day.
Someone's level 3 portfolio for them. Yeah. There's a hole in there where there should be something.
Yeah.
It cannot just be adults do this, adults do this, adults do this.
It says interactions with adults, and the first 3 bullet points are talking, questioning, and facilitating. And then the rest of them are instructing, comforting, supporting, managing, controlling, directing, physical stance, and all of those last ones are adult to child. And then proximity. But yeah, even when I went to observe a session the other day, I'd never met the group before, and 3 children directed me, controlled me, and managed me. They're come here, I need to show you. Come with me on this path. Let's go this way. We're going here because blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Now you wait there. I'm going to hide. All those kind of things. Yeah.
Should be in there. There's something, I don't know. There's something afoot. Amiss. Something's amiss.
Yeah. There's some, a little interesting bit about exclusion.
Oh, yeah.
Of others, which I like the fact that wasn't...
You like the excluding?
Well, I know. It wasn't judgmental, the way that they're describing these examples, of somebody being... Oh, and I really enjoyed the little scripted bits where they transcribed what the children are saying. You were laughing at one point.
I was laughing because there was one that was essentially it was 2 children going we are all cats in this house. Yes, and I found a mouse. Yes, and we hate mice because we're cats. Yes, and I've killed it. That's good. I killed it with a hammer. It's just with a hammer is such a sharp left turn. It's very good.
I would love to be watching the videos.
Yeah.
I would love it. I think we're done.
I think it's they're 2 very good articles, and the Sage one links to a lot more articles, which could be interesting for people to look at.
Yeah.
But new bit of research, play affordances. We've talked about play types and play spaces before, so it was an interesting and like we said, we talked to John and Marina. It's another lens to put on to go. You've made your play space, but have you done this to the play space?
What's actually happening here?
Yeah. just every time you think, as I said, every time you think you've got it, I know how to design a play space. Yeah, but what if the people don't know how to use the play space? Well, fuck! It's another thing. Which is great, keeps you agile.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Bye.
If you like this podcast and want to support more episodes, you can donate through Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Children of the Forest to show your support for the Forest School podcast.